This just into CNN. New House Oversight Chairman, Republican James Comer, is requesting information about the Biden family's financial transactions, requesting that information from the Treasury Department, also calling on several former Twitter executives to testify at a public hearing.
Comes as Republicans have accused the social media company of suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story in the lead up to the 2020 presidential election. CNN's Sarah Murray joins us now.
So they are looking for these bank activity reports, suspicious bank activity reports known as SARs. They're looking at those for Hunter Biden. They're looking at those for James Biden, who's Hunter Biden's brother, as well as a variety of companies and associates. They also want any communications between the White House and the Treasury Department. And they're also looking for public testimony from a trio of former Twitter officials. Again, as you pointed out, about sort of the Hunter Biden laptop story. What they say is this effort to suppress information around the 2020 election. The sort of theory that James Comer is going on is this notion that there is some sort of compromising activity that the Biden family was engaged in, that there may have been some kind of foreign influence that is now impacting the sitting president. Again, these are allegations.
Okay.
They have not proved this. These are based on SARs, which are these reports that banks file, and there are millions that are filed a year, and very few of them lead to law enforcement activity. So just because there may be some of these suspicious activity reports does not mean that that's an indication of wrongdoing.
Understood. Okay. Sarah Murray, thanks so much.
Well, they're looking to see whether or not the Bidens had any foreign influence during the election, whether they have any contact with foreign entities, especially in the Hunter Biden case. They're interested in China.
Another one of their targets already, of course, is going to be Biden's handling of classified documents.
But here's the potential problem for President Biden. We don't know what is in these 10 or so documents. The reporting, CNN's own reporting, says that they touch on Ukraine. Republicans hear Ukraine, they think, aha, Hunter Biden. We don't know that. But if there is any connection, obviously that takes this into a completely different political realm.
I do think one issue that's still outstanding is whether or not the Republicans are going to demand that there be searches or investigations with regard to other locations where where President Biden may have had documents.
Yeah, good point.
Well, Kate, the White House has been pretty limited in the information that they've provided since the news of this classified documents discovery first came out. Now, one thing that has been implicitly said by both the president's statements and those statements from the White House counsel's office is that they're trying to draw this contrast with the way they've handled this document discovery and those classified documents that were found at former President Donald Trump's home down in Mar-a-Lago. The White House trying to show that they've been transparent with the National Archives on this, but this is certainly a huge political headache for the White House, especially as Republicans immediately pounced on this issue.
And Republicans are also already starting to follow through on their promise to investigate the Biden administration. In a series of letters, the newly minted House Oversight Committee chairman is asking the Treasury Department to hand over information on the Biden family's finances. They're also asking some Twitter executives to testify now about how the platform handled a 2020 story on Hunter Biden and his laptop.
House Oversight Chairman James Comer flexing his new investigative might, firing off a round of letters today. These ones go to the U.S. Treasury as well as to a trio of former Twitter officials. All of this gets back to the Hunter Biden investigation that Comer has said is going to be a top priority for the Oversight Committee. Now, from Treasury, they're looking for these bank activity reports related to Hunter Biden, related to James Biden, who is Joe Biden's brother, and related to a variety of associates and businesses that are connected to the Biden family.
What could they get from that? What does this investigation look like, do you think?
They're going to have a very hard time getting anything. As Dana said, they're well prepared for this on the legal side, and there's enormous lessons to be learned from the last years of just how hard it can be for Congress to get information. Ideally, if they were looking to find evidence of wrongdoing, they might find some suspicious activity reports, and then they could say, well, there was money that moved from point A to point B. Maybe there are foreign bank accounts. They could try to get witnesses to talk about that, and then maybe they could ultimately make a referral to the Justice Department. Honestly, that could take months to years for them to accomplish. There's so much defense that can be put up in the way of that. Everything from is the legitimate legislative purpose to questions of executive privilege, privacy, and as I pointed out in the opinion piece just this morning, at the end of the day, Democrat lawyers should have learned that there is no real downside to simple defiance. Let them try and stumble forward with the contempt proceeding.
Thinking about kind of the fallout, I don't know if that is even the right word, Dana, but if this doesn't turn into anything, serves just as a thorn in Biden's side, is that a productive win for the new Republican majority?
And when you say that, you're talking about all of the oversight, or specifically the question about the documents found?
On this investigation, if you will, because there is so much more to it with the classified documents as well. You could almost wrap it all into the same thing, right?
You could. No, that's a really good point. Listen, this is a thorn that the Biden administration knew was coming. What they didn't know was when I say this, I mean all of the questions that Comer put out there about, Hunter Biden and finances and so forth. Mm-hmm. What they didn't see coming was, and certainly the people working for him did not see coming, and the Democrats on the Hill didn't see coming, Kate, was this folder of 10 documents marked classified found in a locked closet. That is something I've been talking to Democrats on the Hill this morning. That is something that there is concern about, not about the way that they handled it after it was found, but because they don't know what they don't know. And it is very unknown, sort of the chain of custody, how it got there, why it got there. The presumption, given what President Biden said yesterday about the fact that he's handled classified documents for 4 or 5 decades and he knows how to do it, is that it was innocent. But they just don't know, and they're definitely critical because it should not happen. And so that is definitely an unforced error from the perspective of Democrats who have been trying to defend and explain President Biden.
So Moderna is considering raising the price of its COVID vaccine, possibly over $100 a dose. Senator Bernie Sanders, he is now calling out the company. He joins us next.
Plus, quote, surprise. President Biden says he doesn't know how classified documents found their way into his private office. Up next for us, President Biden says he does not know how classified documents ended up in a private office. Well, the Justice Department is now investigating, and Congress wants answers too. Now, fallout from a classified discovery. The leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee now asking for access to those top secret materials found at Joe Biden's private office. House Republicans say they want to investigate too. All that happening as the president explains and as Attorney General confronts another giant decision. Merrick Garland now has the preliminary findings of an inquiry into how and why classified documents, including top secret intelligence memos, wound up in the office Mr. Biden used during the Trump presidency.
If they close this out, right, if they say nothing to see here, then they're going to get killed by the Republicans on the Hill who say, well, you're treating him so much differently from Donald Trump. I mean, obviously, we know that there are two different circumstances, much different.
But this is an interesting contradiction in our own reporting, because the president says he doesn't know. Most of his team says they don't know what's in the documents. But Jeff Zeleny reporting yesterday that a White House official did a call, no talking points, nothing in paper, but did a call with some White House allies saying, characterize the documents as fewer than a dozen. We do know that. 2 people familiar with the call say, and then the person said, none of which are, quote, particularly sensitive, and, quote, not of high interest to the intelligence community. Well, if they don't know what's in the documents, how can they say that? So they're either making it up or they do know.
Or, right. They sort of need to resolve that at this point, because and I think you kind of need to know what they are to know how damaging or sensitive they are. And I think that's a good example of in terms of the politics here. Obviously, we have talked ad nauseum about the key factual differences between this case and the case involving the former president. But I do think Democrats need to be careful about not being too much, there's nothing to see here.
It is inconvenient for this White House, for this president. It was a great contrast, I think, that he had before, being the person who had all of this experience, and Donald Trump obviously not having that experience and handling the documents in the way that he did. He wants to be on script as much as possible on this. I mean, when he was in Mexico, it almost looked like he was on script talking about it. So they've got to be careful, and Democrats at this point have to see what comes out as well.
Up next for us, some new details on the many other investigations House Republicans are launching, including new demands for financial information about the president's son and his brother. Chairman Comer says he wants to know if the president's been compromised. He wants to know if Hunter Biden's international dealings and Frank Biden, the president's brother, also uses the family name. There's no question about that. There's just no question that they have traded on the vice president's name or Senator Biden's name. He's now president of the United States. Another committee is going to be investigating what the Republicans call weaponization of the government against people, including the Justice Department.
Plus, President Biden breaking his silence on his classified documents problem, claiming that he was surprised to learn that they were in his private office and that he doesn't even know what's in them. Meanwhile, the DOJ and Republicans dig deeper. Well, President Biden, for the first time, is reacting to the classified documents found in his private office. They included U.S. intelligence memos and briefing materials related to Ukraine, Iran, and the UK.